our heroes for their service and sacrifice.
He could have kept on shooting at us when the plane was on fire, knowing fully well that we would have hit the water and drowned, but he didn't do that.
80 years after landing on the beaches of Normandy.
On behalf of the American people, it's the highest honor to be able to salute you here in Normandy once more.
It's been a blessing to be able to be here. It's hard to understand the sacrifices they made on these beaches.
Think of it, I'm walking history.
Thank you, thank you.
I feel like I'm a messenger for these guys that gave their life.
Thank you for joining us as we take some time to share the stories of our veterans. I'm John Lauritsen. Over the past year here at WCCO, we've met a group of World War II veterans as they headed to Normandy, France to remember D-Day 80 years later. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs shows just over 66,000 of the 16 million Americans who served in World War II are still alive. 100-year-old Les Schrenk is one of them. The Long Prairie native made his first ever trip to Normandy, France in June. WCCO tagged along, and his photojournalist Tom Aviles and I found Les's real-life story reads more like a script straight from Hollywood.
You don't sit around watching TV drinking beer. You keep active.
5 days a week, Les Schrenk can be found doing water aerobics at his senior living facility. He goes hard for 45 minutes, exercising his arms, legs, and mind.
I still feel young. I don't have any aches or pains or anything like that, so I think I'm very, very thankful.
At 100 years old, Les is used to making waves. But in early June, the World War II veteran left his pool behind and headed for the English Channel. It was his first trip to Normandy.
I'm having a time of my life, and right now, I haven't even got time to think of the people back home.
Les paid his respects to fellow American soldiers who never returned. He even took time to collect sand from Omaha Beach.
Who's got the lid? Everything amazes me. I can't put words to it. I've hit the water.
There's a reason why Les wanted to make this journey. Even though he fought in the war, he was a prisoner on D-Day. Right before the Allied invasion, he and his B-17 crew were shot down by a German ace in Denmark. Les spent more than a year as a POW.
I'm tired of war and all its strife.
Writing poetry with his fellow American prisoners helped him get through.
Now, dear Lord, please let me rest.
But there was something else that kept him going. Les always wondered why the German pilot who shot his plane didn't finish them off.
He could have kept on shooting at us when the plane was on fire, knowing fully well that we would have hit the water and drowned, but he didn't do that.
Finally, in his late 80s, curiosity got the best of him.
Actual photo of the plane that he shot us down with.
And with help from European friends, Les tracked down a phone number for the German who spared his life. When he called, a woman answered.
I was grateful. I wanted to put flowers on his grave. And she says, "What do you mean put flowers on his grave? He's sitting right here beside me."
Oh,
hello.
That's
been so long.
That's how Les got to know Hans Hermann Muller. They became the unlikeliest of friends and even agreed to meet in Germany.
We hugged each other, and it was like we were old buddies.
And then Les asked the question that had been haunting him for decades. Why was his crew allowed to live?
And he said, yes, I could have shot you, but why should I? Is exactly what he said.
Do you think he was just tired of the killing and the war at that point?
I think so, yes. If it would have been anybody else, I wouldn't be here today.
They kept in touch until Muller died a few years ago. Their friendship gave Les some closure. But he still needed to see Normandy.
What I enjoyed most, good heavens, I enjoyed the whole trip. Had a very much of an effect on me.
What was it like walking down to Omaha Beach?
Very, very emotional. It's what I personally scooped up.
We made contact.
Standing in the very place where sacrifices were made allowed Les to reflect on the French people who were liberated, the German pilot who spared his life, and his fellow American soldiers who never got a chance to have a moment like this one.
The whole thing was just an absolute dream. Every veteran I talked to said it's the highlight of their life.
Would you like to go back?
Most certainly, in a heartbeat.
And I believe he will. Les tells me he's had the travel bug since he went to France. Most recently went on an honor flight to visit the World War II Museum in New Orleans. While in France, Les made friends with other veterans, including the oldest man on the trip. That's 107-year-old Reynolds Tomter of Pigeon Falls, Wisconsin. We caught up with Reynolds to learn why going back to Normandy meant so much to him.
Shall we go get something to eat?
In the town of Whitehall, Wisconsin,
This is a great spot.
there lives a man known for his positivity and politeness.
Thank you. There you go. Holy cat, look at that. I'm going to enjoy it all.
His name is Reynolds Tomter,
I eat a lot because I work hard.
and even at 107 years old, he still looks forward to lunchtime.
He has a good appetite. They also give him all the different options.
As they should. A full stomach for Reynolds means a full array of stories.
I was born in 1917 on a farm, no electricity, no water.
Norwegian was actually his first language as a kid. Reynolds grew up near Pigeon Falls, got married, worked at a general store, and on the day of his daughter's baptism, his brother-in-law delivered some devastating news.
He said, Pearl Harbor just got bombed. Holy cats.
Reynolds enlisted in the Merchant Marines, where he became a baker on his ship and a backup gunner. He was stationed in Brooklyn, New York, when he realized just how close they were to the war.
There was already German subs all in that area. And I thought, you got to be kidding. No, they were right here.
Reynolds made 5 white-knuckle trips across the Atlantic to Europe, each time wondering if German U-boats had them in their sights.
You could expect one anytime. You had to go with that in mind.
He returned to Pigeon Falls after the war and never thought he'd go back to Europe. But just before the 80th anniversary of D-Day in June, he got a letter in the mail inviting him to Normandy. The letter also informed him that he's the oldest living merchant marine in the world. With help from American Airlines and his son Bud, Reynolds and about 70 other World War II veterans spent nearly 2 weeks in France. He was selected to lay the wreath on a monument at one of the ceremonies, and he got to meet Steven Spielberg at another event. Reynolds was also the oldest veteran on the trip by 5 years.
We had an overwhelming welcome. I got put on a pedestal. We got surrounded by French people. Wherever our unit stopped, they looked right to you square in the eye, and they said, thank you.
That is beautiful, isn't it?
Normandy is also where he met 101-year-old Les Schrank of Bloomington. Les was a POW during D-Day, and the two veterans became fast friends, even though Reynolds is older by 6 years.
Yes, he is a whippersnapper. He's my close friend, very close friend. He is a hero, a definition of a hero.
The two men have even gotten together back home since they met overseas.
These humble human beings' testimony and firsthand experience, for them to consider it to be a trip of a lifetime, to me, that's really special.
Reynolds still gets out and about. He was driving up until about 3 months ago, and even after that, he used a golf cart to get around town.
We lost so many men.
But these days, he mostly stays close to home. Still, memories of serving his country and memories of Normandy are never far from his mind.
That's the highlight of my life, making this trip to Normandy. It's really something. What an honor.
Thank you for watching this YouTube premiere of Normandy 80 Years Later, a Veterans Day WCCO special. I'm John Lauritsen. Keep watching for all those stories and much more, or check the description below to see what else this special has in store. D-Day is often called the turning point of World War II. Nearly 160,000 troops landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944. 73,000 were from the United States, It took 11,000 aircraft and 7,000 ships to get them all in place. And this past June, 80 years after those troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, the remaining survivors of that day were honored for their service and their sacrifice. That invasion put America on the path to win the war and changed the course of history. I was lucky enough to be there with Minnesota veterans and active service members for the ceremony marking the unforgettable milestone.
With salutes and smiles.
Thank you.
World War II veterans were recognized by French President Emmanuel Macron and President Joe Biden. Their courageous efforts highlighted in front of military members and Hollywood celebrities like Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg.
On behalf of the American people and as Commander-in-Chief, it's the highest honor to be able to salute you here in Normandy once more.
June 6, 1944.
Exactly 80 years ago, many of the men on stage fought through the clamor and chaos of D-Day, while their brothers in arms fell at their sides. The price of freedom clearly visible, just feet away.
There are things that are worth fighting and dying for. America's worth it. The world is worth it.
The ceremony caps off several days of reflection here at Normandy, and Minnesotans have been a big part of it all. That includes 100-year-old Jim Rasmussen of East Bethel.
Surprisingly, I got a little emotional when they were playing the taps there, you know, and whatnot. So apparently it affected me in some ways, to be back here at this time.
Jim fought in France during World War II. Like so many others, this could be his last trip to Normandy, so he's making the most of it.
I always try and tell the kids and whatnot, you know, they got to remember what other people did for you, that you got to this point.
It's a message that Nora McFall takes to heart.
It's just amazing to hear their stories and hear how their sacrifices allowed us to be free and where we are today.
There's an 80-year age difference between Jim and Nora, but they're brought together by a common bond of service and their home state. Nora is on active duty and she's from Minnetonka. This has been a week she'll never forget.
It's been a blessing to be able to be here. It's hard to understand the sacrifices they made on these beaches.
And each of our featured veterans have talked about honoring those who never made it back from the war. That includes Virgil Tangborn, a soldier from northern Minnesota who died while serving his country, but left a lasting impression on the people he helped liberate.
What I aspire for you people is to understand not only what happened in history, but the importance of recognizing the people who make history, living and dead.
28 years ago, history teacher Steve Worley received a lesson of his own.
There was a sheaf of papers on my desk.
The school's principal had left him the story of Virgil Tangborn.
This story is more important than any exam that you're ever going to take.
Because it's a reminder of just how precious and precarious life can be.
It was a journal of his thoughts and feelings before Pearl Harbor and after, when he realizes he is going to be caught up in this event. So, Anna, can you start it?
So Worley has his students read it.
Next Tuesday, I leave for Fort Snelling.
As part of their World War II studies at the Academy of Holy Angels.
Maybe I'll be back by the end of the week, maybe end of the decade.
Virgil landed at Utah Beach with the 90th Infantry Division. They suffered heavy casualties, fighting a well-dug-in German army in the French countryside.
This will be my last day for recording until the present ordeal is over.
He served on the front lines as a stretcher bearer, often exposing himself to enemy fire. But just 8 days after arriving at Normandy, Virgil was killed by an artillery blast while trying to help a fellow soldier escape from a burning truck.
Part of the reason I teach is so that guys like Virgil will have a voice.
He would have gone here in probably the early to mid-30s.
Like Steve, Wayne Hoff has a vested interest in Virgil's legacy.
She talked about him quite frequently.
Virgil was his mom's brother.
He was just very, very kind, tender-hearted.
He was a voracious reader who excelled in the classroom. It's a big reason why Wayne has fought for decades to save the little school his uncle attended in Neri, Minnesota.
Is that the same sign you remember?
It's exactly the same, yeah.
Wayne believes Virgil was destined to return here to teach if he had come back from the war.
Neri isn't the only town that continues to honor Virgil. Across the Atlantic Ocean here in Perrier, France, This monument was built with him in mind. In fact, this is Virgil right here.
The faces, they just look like their real faces.
Christian Livos' father pushed for this memorial, and it was finally built 20 years ago. Virgil is one of 4 soldiers highlighted for helping to liberate Perrier in 1944, an act of bravery that's still taught in nearby schools.
We think that if not the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful memorials dedicated to the soldiers.
A young soldier who will forever be 22 years old. A life cut short by war.
Casualties, people like Virgil Tangborn.
But his legacy lives on.
They were coming from all over the States.
In France.
He was into literature and science.
In Neri.
Abandoning the relative tranquility of northern Minnesota.
And in Steve Worley's classroom.
To help turn the tide of history requires remarkable courage.
One of the last things he wrote was that his dad believed he should go into educational work. And I always tell the kids, in some ways, he did become a teacher. He's taught me a lot about sacrifice, a lot about service, and a lot about deferring your own dreams and your own hopes for something much larger. And remember that and tell your kids about it. And don't ever shy away from learning more about these stories.
That's for sure. Still ahead, from World War II hero to social media star, we meet up with a now 101-year-old helping a new generation catch up with the greatest one. We hope you're enjoying our Normandy Veterans Day special. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments down below. For some who fought and died in World War II, it took years before their families found closure. 79,000 troops were listed as missing in action. And in July of 2021, we were there as one Minnesota family finally got to lay their soldier to rest.
Ready? Aim. Fire.
Second Lieutenant William Henry Melville was buried with military honors at Fort Snelling National Cemetery. He went missing in action in 1943 in New Guinea. The Minneapolis native was 20 years old at the time. Lieutenant Melville was unaccounted for until 2020 when DNA was used to identify his remains. He was then brought home to Minnesota. Many of the men who survived World War II have spent their lives ensuring their brothers who died will not be forgotten. 101-year-old Papa Jake Larson is one of those men. We caught up with him in France and quickly learned how the war hero is now a big hit on TikTok.
I'm 101, going on 102. Hell, I'm the luckiest man in the world. Look at me, I'm sitting here.
Papa Jake Larson is always witty, wise, and to the point.
Think of it, I'm walking history.
He's a self-described farm boy from Hope Township, Minnesota, and he grew up during the Great Depression with no electricity or running water. He lied about his age so he could join the National Guard at the age of 15. A few years later, he found himself in World War II.
I would be going to war.
Not only was Jake sent to France, he got in on the planning of the D-Day invasion. He learned to type in high school and knew as much about typewriters as he did about guns.
It changed my life. It raised me right up to the top.
So when military leaders like Eisenhower and Bradley began preparing for D-Day, it was Papa Jake who helped type their plan.
Every person that landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day came through these fingers. These fingers I'm showing you right now. Type their name.
That also meant typing his own name.
It was hell. That whole beach under us had over 1 million landmines planted.
From planning to fighting, he was the first man off the command boat and was responsible for helping to organize troops on Omaha Beach. At 101, he's outlived many of the soldiers who fought with him that day.
Every person is gone. I'm the only one left. I'm a messenger for these guys that gave their life.
How many years of World War II survivor?
Papa Jake delivers that message through a platform most 101-year-olds aren't familiar with. All thanks to his granddaughter.
And she came to me and she says, I put you on my TikTok. What the hell is TikTok?
I met a man one day from the USA.
Within a week, he had more than 10,000 followers. It's been a way to connect the greatest generation with the youngest generation. They post about sporting events, but also about ceremonies where they celebrate veterans, not athletes.
And now Papa Jake is back at Normandy. The D-Day invasion he helped plan happened right here at these beaches. And there's a reason why, even at his age, he feels the need to return.
I come back to honor their souls. There's my buddies. They're up there right now. They're up there waiting for me.
In France, Papa Jake feels the love.
Thank you very much.
People of all ages know who he is.
Thank you.
And they come out of the woodwork just to be near this hero.
They treat me like a celebrity, and I'm just a farm boy from Hope, Minnesota. It's crazy. It's plain crazy.
He hopes this isn't his last trip to Normandy, because his mission now is to make sure the fallen aren't forgotten.
It's such an honor. It's really such an honor.
An amazing man. In addition to being a TikTok star, Papa Jake is also an author. He wrote a book called The Luckiest Man in the World. And I certainly feel pretty lucky, too, to be able to share these veteran stories with you. A big thank you goes out to all the veterans who have served and current military and members still serving. We appreciate all you've done for our country.
Surprisingly, I got a little emotional when they were playing the taps there, you know, and whatnot. So apparently it affected me in some ways.
What was it like walking down to Omaha?
Very, very emotional.
Power of the place is just overwhelming. We don't have all the time in the world to be with these heroes, and it's time to take advantage of when we can.
Help us bring more veterans home for the holidays. Last year, we raised nearly $1 million for the Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans and their mission to end veteran homelessness. To learn more and donate, head to WCCO.com/holidays.
Thanks again for watching our Normandy Veterans Day special. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more WCCO news.